All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we answer the question, what does Jeff, Chris, and the hilarious, critically acclaimed comedian Dante all have in common? They've all saved at least one human life. So, Chris, really excited this episode because not only did I just remember that I have a good friend that I've known for decades who is an amazing premier comic. He's one of those guys that actually took comedy seriously and made an actual career out of it and actually found success with it versus me, the guy that just experiments with it. But again, other interesting things about this gentleman is he actually went to the same high school as you and I. Now he's a younger fellow, but yeah, super cool. So look, without further ado, man, I'm gonna introduce our guest today. This is Dante, and if you don't know, folks, Dante is huge resume, right? Last Comic Standing. He's won, believe it or not, get this, more BET awards than any other performer.
Oh, thanks, buddy. And BET, by the way, for the white people listening, isn't a betting network. It's for black people.
That's right. Exactly. So yeah, this isn't one of those chain smoking in the slot room and listening to your Keno number kind of a thing.
Although that does sound great.
Back in the days when we had diversity. Hi. So Dante, what's up, man?
Hi, buddy. Thanks for having me on, my patriots, my fellow patriots.
Yeah.
My alumnus.
Now, for those of you that don't know, we are patriots, but actually at Patrick Henry High School, where Chris and I and Dante all graduated from, in San Carlos, which is kind of near San Diego State University kind of area in San Diego proper.
That's what I tell people, generally.
We were the Patriots, right? That was our actual,
Correct.
Right, there you go. So when we say we're patriots, man, we are patriots.
And we're not like J6 patriots. We are like Patrick Henry patriots. And so many celebrities of all kinds went to our school. I'm sure you guys have talked about this a million times, but it's always impressive, like to my wife who went to school in Vegas, and she's like, you had celebrities, we didn't even have windows, which is true. There were no windows at her high school.
Why?
Because it's Vegas. It's too hot.
Oh, okay. Oh.
And the parents' PTA spent all their money at slot machines, couldn't afford glass.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
Yeah, but did you know that in the first year, Annette Benning's sister went to Patrick Henry, and then like the second or third year, Annette Bening went to Patrick Henry. But I'm talking like first year it ever opened, like 71 or whatever it was.
Right. Yeah. So I guess she would have been going there at the same time as my older brother. So he was the first class to actually graduate all the way through at Patrick Henry. And my mom actually knew Annette Benning's mom. They went to the same church, St. Dunstan's right there. So by God, a small world.
Yeah, Ricky Williams went to our school. The football player, Matt Noakes, the baseball player, and some other big baseball players. I couldn't even name everybody.
Yeah, Eric Karros and Aaron Harang.
But so many people, so many comedians came out of there. A guy named Tommy Chun went there. Faison Love went there. Jeff Thill, Dante, Anthony Ramos, Melissa Greenberg. I'm sure you could name a couple more that were stand-ups. But yeah, I mean, a lot of stand-ups came out of Patrick Henry.
And like Chris just said, Eric Karros, right? The famous LA Dodger. Yeah.
Aaron Harang, and there's a few others, definitely. RuPaul,
that's right. RuPaul went to our school.
I guess he did not graduate, but he was there. He did not graduate, but
he did go there.
Yes.
I actually posted that when they put a picture of me in their new theater. They also put a picture of me right next to RuPaul. So when I posted it, I tagged RuPaul, and then he commented online about it. And so, yeah, it was like really cool.
I didn't know that. I literally thought it was Eric Karros, and that was maybe it. And then I remembered, oh shit, Dante went to Patrick Henry. Now, Dante, let me ask you this: when Chris and I left Patrick Henry High School, it was after that big, huge drug bust, right? And this was like the 21 Jump Street drug bust.
I'm going to assume you guys were part of all of that. It was your fault.
Right. Well, we weren't in the smoking section. And basically, like I've said to Chris, all they really had to do, no investigation, just go to the smoking section at the beginning of the year and take them all out of there.
Young kids today can't believe that we had a smoking section at our school.
Yeah, where you were encouraged to smoke. Smoke them if you got them, man. Yeah, absolutely. So was it a little clean? Did they clean it up, Dante, when you got there? Was it, yeah.
So when I first started, I'll say this, it got cleaned up while I was going there. So while I was going there, it was still smoking section. You still had those long-haired goddamn hippies, over there smoking and doing their drugs. But, I think we were coming out of that era. And by the time I graduated, it felt different. There were problems there. I'm not going to lie. My first day of 11th grade, I walked into the bathroom and a young boy was stabbing another boy right in front of me. Hey, it was the 80s. We're Gen X. No one came up to me and said, would you like some therapy? I am now talking to my therapist about it, however many years later. And it's like the least of my troubles. So that's Generation X for you.
But that's so great about the 70s or 80s in this case, because you don't know if he lived. You got over it. And
you got no therapy.
Were you even asked any questions as a witness, or did they just not even give a shit?
Nothing happened back then. No one cared about shit. I can't believe that our parents just let us go out all day and said, oh, when lights come on outside, that's the law. Come home.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were feral. All of us were feral. And speaking of that, we had a place called Farrell's that we all like to go to on the weekend.
I was just going to say, Chris and I did an entire episode on Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor. Dante, please tell me at least once that you and your buddies ordered the zoo sundae at Farrell's.
Of course, so you could get the bell to ring and everybody came out. And yeah, of course, I actually used to work at the AMC movie theater right there. And I'll tell you a story in a little bit when we get to the Dante college years. I will tell you a story about working there.
Right on. We both worked at movie theaters. I love it. I think a lot of comics ended up at one point or another being an usher at a movie theater because it's the greatest place to write material, right? You got a lot of downtime.
It's an easy job.
It's a good job. And I hated, you got to see all the movies for free in parts. My first movie, when I first started working there, I don't know if you remember this, but what was the one with Willem Dafoe playing Jesus? Last Temptation of Christ. It was where people were saying they're going to blow up theaters. They're going to, cut the screens. They're going to set the place on fire. So day one of my job was sitting at the front of that movie for 8 hours and looking at the audience. So I got to hear the movie like 6 times a day or 5 times a day, whatever it was, for the first 2 months that I worked there, because it was still the #1 movie in America. Like, I have it memorized, that movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That sounds to me like the same thing the CIA would do if you were captured. They would put you in a room and just blast that movie in your ears for 24 hours straight.
In my ears and make me stare at an audience that are looking up. It was crazy.
Dante, we've said it many times. Nothing gets people more violent than the Bible.
And guess what? After all of that, did I get any therapy? Did the police ask me any questions? Nothing.
What is the deal with you? Do you think maybe, Dante, that there's a common factor here in these stabbings and riots? And do you feel like there's some common thread here?
So I've seen lots of people die, and I've never been to war. I've watched people get shot in front of me. The worst possible things. I've saved babies' lives that were choking in the middle of the street, and drove them to all right. So one lady who follows me online, especially after that baby thing happened, she goes, I think things happen in front of you because the Lord knows you'll react. And I always do react. And I'm the one who did save the baby when no one else tried to or whatever. So who knows? I'm sorry to bring you down on that one.
You're not at all. In fact, sometimes the conversation goes in a very different direction, but dude, that is incredible. What I love about the save the baby moments, and again, this is going to put a lot of pressure on my buddy Chris, because I'm going to say a very quick save the baby story, and then Chris, you're going to have to do one, or you're a giant piece of shit.
Yeah, Chris.
All right.
Right. So here's my save the baby story. I had a buddy where his infant, I would say, not an infant, but a year and a half old, she was playing in the cab of his truck. And this is a truck that's lifted really high, right? And she's kind of getting out the window a little bit. And I said, hey, as we're playing, basketball, should we be watching her? And he's like, oh, no, she can't actually get out. She's just going to peek over the edge there. She's fine. And in the corner of my eye, I see this kid just edge out a little too far over the door sill, and down she goes, man. And luckily it was about a 4.5-foot drop, but she was going head first straight towards the cement. God. And I dove. I did one of the heroes dives, right? Where, just dragging my bare knees across the asphalt, and kind of did one of those Hail Mary saves, and just barely got her soft head right before it just literally exploded on the asphalt. And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, Dante, but
I doubt it.
To this day, I do feel like I saved that kid from, at the very least,
you did save that kid.
Severe spinal injury. Now, Chris, please, the floor is yours.
Closest thing to mine story, and I do have one. Okay, so right before high school, this is Navajo Senior League baseball. It's our team party, end of the year, pool party at somebody's house, and the coach, we're all gathered on the patio. Nobody's in the pool, and the coach is party's kind of wrapping up, and coach is saying something and giving awards to the players. And like us 15-year-olds, we get a pin and stuff like that because it's our last year at senior. The coach himself had a younger brother of a player who was essentially Satan. Okay. This kid was about 6 or 7 years old, couldn't be trusted with anything. Another player had a little sister who was probably 18 months old or something like that. We were all at the party. Everything is quiet. Nobody's in the pool, or so we thought. We're all looking, that we're on the patio and the coach is talking. And yes, this is me. I will never forget this. The images, are burned in your mind. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, and everybody turns around, and Satan is the satanic kid, about 6, has the 18-month-old and is holding her under the water horizontally. I could see her face, like she's probably 10 or 12 inches under the water, curly blonde hair, just I could see her just staring and bubbles coming out. She's not flailing. She's not doing anything. I don't know if she started to drown. And it was like people jumped in the pool and the kid ran away. And it was like, and everything was okay. She was just, it may have been mere seconds, but it was I can see it, much like you can see, Dante, what you were talking about, the bathroom stabbing, or, the last temptation of Christ, violence or potential violence. I can see this. And this was decades, just like that, decades and decades ago, of this little girl. Her bathing suit was red and her hair was blonde, and
it left an imprint on you because it was PTSD, man. And again, here you are years later, still feeling funny when you tell the story. That's how I feel. Like, I didn't even tell you my baby story. I was driving my wife. I was sitting at Echo Park Lake here in LA because my wife was getting her hair done. And I was sitting in my car doing work. I have a business we'll talk about hopefully at some point. And while I was sitting in the car, she texts me, hey, it's time to come pick me up. And the house is literally on the lake. So I just have to drive like a block away. As I'm driving, there's cars swerving around a man. And I've got my top down in my convertible. And this man is like trying to wave down cars. And I thought, oh man, it's like a homeless man or something in the middle of the road. Turns out it was a guy who barely speaks any English. I guess he's Mexican or something. And he's holding a blonde baby in the middle of the street, screaming and crying for someone to stop. Everyone's swerving around him and honking at him like he's an asshole. So he gets in my car. I say, what's wrong? He says that they're choking. She's choking. So I start trying to do the Heimlich on her. I'm pushing on her stomach, I've taken 10 CPR classes in my life, and you have to take it when you have a baby and all this stuff. So I'm freaking out. And my first thought is, it's a time issue now. We have to get her to a hospital. Someone's got to save her. So I drive on the opposite side of the street with cars coming at me, and I'm just honking and honking. And I put in my GPS. I'm still squeezing this poor little girl's tummy while I'm doing it. And then I see a cop, and I literally run into his car without hitting him, but like head to head, like I stop him. He's coming, he's going in the opposite way of traffic, and I just stop him, and I run out with this little girl, and then I put him in his arms. He flips her upside down. But at that point, I'm blocking all traffic. We're at a four-way stop. The man is with his baby. A mother is running out of the park now screaming. I get in the car and I drive to my wife. I don't know what happened. And I sat there in the car, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I started crying literally for about 5 minutes. And when I was done, I said, "I think a little girl just died in our car." And, even though I got it to the cop, luckily that night it was on the news, and you see me, I guess he had one of those cameras on his chest. You see me run up, hand it to him. And when he does flip her, she unchokes on whatever it was and lived. And the guy's a hero and good. I don't need any credit, but yeah, that's what happened.
Holy moly. Good God. You guys, all of us, heroes.
We should call this the hero episode.
We really should. And Chris, yours is so Stephen King.
It really is. I know that kid is like holding him underwater. It's crazy.
It's like The Omen or something, right? Where it's like, Damien. Oh my God. So Chris, on a different episode, we'll have to go into whatever happened to that kid. We'll have to track that kid down. I would love to see what jail he's in right now, or prison. Holy shit.
Or what elected office he holds.
Dante, you survived. Patrick Henry, barely, it sounds like. Chris and I were kind of half joking, but Jesus, man.
We had more race riots during my time there. There were a lot of fights between white and black. Never me. I was always like the mediator. I would try to step in and stop everything, and I was friends with everybody. But we had a lot of like white people fighting the Laotians, or, I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird time, those 80s. And in mid-80s, it's like we didn't even use our fists. If you wanted to fight, you had to like break dance midway. Like, I'll see you at lunch. You do one of these, with your hands making the waves.
That is true. And if you didn't bring a slab of cardboard.
Yeah, you had to ask them, "Can I stand on your cardboard?" Which is weird when you're fighting them, But it was like the Jets.
That's right.
Definitely.
That's right. Just much fancier. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So very cool. And then you barely escape the nightmarish world of bored middle-class white kids going to Patrick Henry. And then when do you get the urge to start getting on stage and doing comedy? What was like the first moment where you're thinking, shit, I got to do this?
So I've wanted to do it my whole life. I started out in a Navy base called China Lake, and my dad was in charge of all of the celebrity visitors, like presidents or Secretary of the Navy, or Ray Charles coming to town, whatever. And one time I saw a group came to my town, and they did improv, and it was close enough to stand up to where I turned to my little buddy and said, "Hey, do you want to do stand up?" Because we were already fans of, we were listening to Cheech and Chong in private, because you couldn't own Cheech and Chong on that base during the 70s because of the drug references. They wouldn't show their movies on the base. I had like all the Richard Pryor albums memorized. I had all the Bill Cosby album. What happened there, right? Sometimes you think you can trust people in sweaters, but not always. Not always. But anyway, I did stand up at 7 years old at my school in my backyard. And then when I moved to San Diego, I still wanted to be a comedian, but it wasn't until we came up to LA for a drama show where we were competing, and I turned to a guy named Gerald Wolfe, who was also a Patrick Henry patriot, and I said, "Hey, do you want to form a comedy team?" And we did. We formed Dante and the Wolf, and we drove back up to LA and performed. Our first show was at the Improv in Hollywood, and Fred Burns was the comedian right before me. He ended up being the manager of the Comedy Store, And the host that night was a guy named Jimmy Brogan, who I knew from, he had been on Happy Days as the Angel, and then he had his own show called Out of the Blue. So I was already a huge
Random,
fan.
right? His name was Random the Angel, I think, if I remember.
Wow. Both of you guys. Wow. Nice poll. All right.
Yes, nice pull. So anyway, I got the bug that night. I was in 11th grade or something. It was 1986 November. And that's when I did it. But I went to the Comedy Store then, right after me and Gerald showed up, thinking it would be like the Improv, where you walk in, you perform. For whatever reason, I guess because the Improv in Hollywood serves food, they don't care what age you are. But at the Comedy Store, I pull up, and the doorman is a guy named Faison Love. And Faison, for those of you listening, he's the big black guy in Elf. He's the manager in Elf. And back in high school, he still looked 50. He's in Friday as big perm, big worm. Anyway, he had gone to Patrick Henry, and we were friends. And as soon as I walked up, I was like, "Hey, buddy." He's like, "You're not getting in." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you're underage." I'm like, "So are you." He's like, "Shut the fuck up. Don't say a word." So he goes, "Look, I look 50, you don't. I'm going to tell them that you both are like 19 and a half. And then that way, they don't know that you're 15. And that way in a year and a half, you can actually get in." So for like a year and a half, I had to run in, do my show, and then run out. And that's just what we did. And then when I turned, whatever it was, 17, I got this fake ID, and I went back, and no one even asked to see it, which was the disappointing part, after spending money on it, doing, like making it look official. And then Frank Manzano came up to me, and he said to me, and my friend was with me that night, who also had a fake ID, and he was my age, but no one knew it. Frank Manzano said, "Happy 21st birthday, Dante. Remember this day, you'll never be 21 again." And my idiot friend goes, "Hey, you never know. You never know. Maybe he will."
Nice. Can I ask you a question? Frank Manzano, because a lot of the guys that Dante's...
Today's his birthday, by the way.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah, happy birthday, Frank Manzano.
Happy birthday, Frank Manzano. Yeah, a lot of the guys that Dante is talking about, I came to the Comedy Store after Dante. He was already up and coming and doing his thing when I was just starting out there. But Frank Manzano is one of the guys that, of course, the lovable, amazingly funny Frank Manzano, but he had two personas, right? Which Dante, I never knew. So the onstage persona for this nice, Mexican guy was, he kind of talks like this, and everything is like this, and that's the cadence of his humor, and it's really, really funny. But I'd never heard him off stage do anything but that character. The last day that I ever saw Frank Manzano, coincidentally, I didn't know it was the last day, and he's still alive, right? It's not like he died that day. But he just talked normal. "Hey, Jeff, how's it going, man? Have a good day." What? Like, I had known this guy for like 7 or 8 years. I had never heard him speak normally, ever. He broke character.
I don't know if I ever have. I still assumed he talks like this. I mean, I used to love his joke where he goes, "I came here from Mexico. We had to leave my grandma behind. Her blouse got stuck on the fence."
Right? The other one was, his other great joke was, "And if you go into my apartment, you will see on the kitchen table a lazy Susan. Oh, sure, Susan would like to get a job." He killed every time. He was just
every time, because it was such a character. It was such a great character.
Yeah, one of those guys that you if you see him, you would know who we're talking about. Anyway,
so Dante and the Wolf break up. That's what happens next.
How did that happen?
It happened two ways. The Wolf, who was this Jewish comedian, decided that when he went to college, he liked this pretty blonde girl who he ended up married to, but she was a Christian, and he thought, "Hey, I should be a Christian." So he became like a super Christian and didn't want to say damn or hell or heck, and didn't have time to come to the Comedy Store anymore. And this was right around the time that Fred Burns said to me, "Lose the Wolf." And I said, "Oh, that's it worked out well." So I go to college at USIU, and I'm working at the Comedy Store, and I'm working at AMC Theater at the time. And one night I'm at the AMC Theater, and this blonde girl from, I don't even remember her name, comes up to me at the AMC and goes, "Hey, by the way, please don't tell my boyfriend, Eric Bishop, that I'm here. He's very jealous. Can you, he wants to do stand-up. Will you help him do stand-up?" And I said, "Sure, I'll help him. And don't tell him, right? Yeah, don't tell him." Next day, I park at school, and here he comes running up to my car like he's going to kill me. I said, "Is this because your girlfriend showed up?" "Yes." "Why was she there?" "She said you want to do stand-up. She knew I've been doing it for like 6-7 years at this point. I'll help you." So now he calms down. I call the Comedy Store and say to Fred, "Can he go up tonight?" I think it's like a Monday. "No, but you can share your 7 minutes with him if you want." So I say, "Okay, Eric, do you have time?" "Yes, I have a couple jokes." So I help him rewrite some. I drive him to the Comedy Store that night. He goes up, does well, gets the comedy bug. And then he leaves school that next year, and friends keep going, "Hey, he's on In Living Color now." And I look for his name. There's no Eric Bishop. Next thing I know, he changed his name to Jamie Foxx, and he has an Academy Award. How crazy.
Well, Chris, I saw you nodding as soon as you heard the name Eric Bishop.
Chris knew. I could tell the minute I said Eric Bishop.
I knew, yeah, because I knew that he also went to USIU, right? So I did not know the backstory because I think he was also like, he wasn't a musician because, again, that's how he be like that kind of thing. Talented guy. Yeah.
Very talented. He got the music scholarship. I got the acting scholarship.
And, the thing that just pisses me off now is that when he won that Academy Award, he didn't thank Dante. Now, did he? But
no, he did not.
Anyway, that is a great freaking story. What was it like for you when he's on Living Color and his name is Jamie Foxx? How did that make you feel? Because it's like, I gave him some of my time.
No, you know what? Honestly, I've never, and this is the truth with me, I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to make myself sound good. You can ask my wife. I don't get jealous of anyone. I root people on.
No, I think you'd be jealous. I just think that's great. It was just like,
no, I know, but it's still a weird thing when you're trying to struggle and you're finding nickels in your couch to buy gas with, and someone you helped is now standing on stage grabbing an Academy Award or something. So, but no, it never felt funny. We barely have ever talked since. Like, he invited me to In Living Color, I think once or twice, and we hung out there, and I used to see him at the Comedy Store. But there's a million stories of people that I helped throughout their career, and other people that, I just happen to know along the way. Same with Jeff, I'm sure, And then there's other people that came into my life once they were famous, and then, I ended up managing them. I had something so I manage actors. I own a company called Golden Artists Entertainment, and we make movies. I book comedians, and I manage, actors, celebrities, performers, all sorts of people, right? And I had a breakthrough moment the reason I'm bringing this up is I had a therapist say to me one day, because during COVID, there was a lot of me on social media fighting with people, like the police brutality at the time, and BLM, and anti-maskers and anti-vax, just whatever it was. And so I said to this woman, I said, I need to stop all of it. It's hurting my mental health. And she says to me, why, my therapist says, why are you so focused on right and wrong? And it took us a couple weeks to figure this out. But she goes, tell me about your childhood. And I said, my parents went out a lot, and I used to watch TV shows like Good Times, What's Happening, Happy Days. And she goes, and how did those shows affect you? As they babysat you every night. And I said, well, they all had a lesson, don't play ball in the house. Don't record the Doobie Brothers without their permission. Don't, do whatever. Yeah. And she goes, so you learned right from wrong from those shows. And she goes, and how have those shows come into play in your life now? And that's the moment I went, oh my God, my opening act was rerun from What's Happening. I manage Dwayne from that show, Haywood Nelson. I manage Jimmy Walker from Good Times. So she goes, oh, I see you found your parents. And I was like, that's called therapy right there. That's what I'm paying for.
Dante, that is amazing. I mean, that is the core of our show, right? Which is being raised by television. And even if you had loving parents,
which I did. They were just absent.
they were largely absent, though. Yeah, right. That's absolutely incredible. And by the way, Dwayne, right? His name's Haywood, correct? That's the actual.
Haywood Nelson.
I was just telling Chris 4 or 5 episodes ago, as I look back on all of the characters that showed up on sitcoms when we were kids, for whatever reason, he always was my favorite. That guy was I feel like he was underrated. It's just that character was just so likable and so effing funny. I just love that guy.
So lovable.
He
and
is.
He's still like that.
Yeah.
I'll have to, if you guys ever want, I can get him for your podcast.
Oh,
He'll do it.
My God. It's so cool.
He's such a nice man, and he hasn't changed at all. Like, so humble, so good, so kind.
Yeah. Yeah. You always get the sense that that guy's not acting. He just shows up and it's like, this is me. I'm just a happy guy. Here I am.
And he is.
Yeah.
And he is.
Yeah. Now, Rerun, well, he was a bit of a schemer. No, I love that. That was a really deep pull that you actually just, under your breath, mentioned the episode, right, where they famously recorded a Doobie Brothers set, and then Rerun, as I recall, got in big trouble, right? And
he was the one who did it.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
He's the one who did it.
Yeah, that's great. So let me ask you this: as you look back on, the Comedy Store, for instance, and Dante, obviously you've been at all the clubs, not only across this country, but internationally, because I know you do a ton of work for vets and for the troops and the USO, which is just super cool of you, man. You're just a mainstay. And, I've seen excerpts of it, and you just destroy on stage, and they love you to death.
Oh, thanks, buddy. That's very nice.
You're amazing. But I want to go to some of the, I wouldn't say darker or seedier stories, but I would say just some of the weirder stories, because just me, local guy in La Jolla, coming up through the Comedy Store there. And again, my mentor was the same as you, Fred Burns, right? Who became the manager.
Fred Burns was also the mentor of so many famous people, like Bobby Lee, for example, Dat Fan, on and on and on and on and on.
Right on. Yep, absolutely. So I have, of course, a million stories, too many to tell, but so many crazy things happened at that Comedy Store, or the one up in Sunset, I'm sure, as well, up in LA. But do you have any that just come to mind, just ape shit weird stuff where...
I remember one night I was hanging out with Sam Kinison, and he took me into, for some reason, the woman's bathroom at the Comedy Store in the main room of the LA store. And he said to me, do this cocaine with me. And I was like, I'm actually doormanning right now, and I don't do cocaine. He's like, Dante, you do the cocaine or you're a cop. I was like, and it's like, it's Sam Kinison, so what do you do? So I did it, and I was super high the rest of the night and wasn't having fun with it at all, because the whole time I thought, Mitzi's going to come in here, see that I'm high, fire me. My heart is racing. All I was thinking about was, I have to drive home tonight. When does this ever wear off? Does it wear off? Are the cops going to pull me over? Like, I'm not set. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a weird night.
Well, nothing calms you down like a couple rails of cocaine, right? And by the way, you're already working around Mitzi, who absolutely, God rest her soul, she did wonders for the world of comedy, but perhaps not the most, stress-free environment, I guess I would say. So
not at all. She is so stressful to be around. So stressful. And like, it was like being around, like when there would be like, Henry VIII, right? He's the one who cut off all the heads of women.
He did.
That's who I felt like we were with Mitzi. It's because no one ever has this great story about her ever being right. No one ever goes, she said to Dave Letterman, you're going to be famous one day. No, she said, you should quit comedy, Dave, because you're just a writer. Or she tells this other guy, wear a banana suit. And he does it. And she goes, and he comes back and goes, hey, I wore the banana suit you told me to. And they loved it. She's like, what are you talking about? I don't remember that. No one has a good story about her ever giving good advice. She just happened to be the one who provided all of this great stage time for the greatest people on earth, and did it in such a way that they could all develop. But it's not like she was this genius passing out great advice. As a matter of fact, she made you so fucking nervous every time she came in because she'd be like, you'd walk up to her and she'd just change the subject. Hey, Mitzi, good to see you. Go get me a cigarette. Can you go buy them down the street and get me cigarettes? I like those little Victoria Slim ones. Something like that or whatever. Not once does anyone have good advice from her. Not one time.
Dante, your impersonation. Listen, I have heard many people do Mitzi impersonations over the years. The tone, it is exact. The inflection is exact. I have never heard, let alone a male doing the impersonation. That was spot on, A+, so good that my heart rate actually went up a little bit. And something in the back of my mind said, oh shit, did I forget to close the back door? Oh shit, did I not lock up? I literally went back, 26 years or whatever it was. God, more than that.
I like doing impressions of people that are just regular life people like her that most people don't know because it scares, of course I've done I remember one night, the pianist from the Comedy Store was in the main room one night, but I remember he was supposed to be, he was just floating back to the OR to play in between acts, but he knew he had 10 minutes. So he was in there and it's only 4 minutes past. But I walked in and pretended, because I was standing in the dark, I pretended to be Andrew Dice Clay. And I just yelled in, I'm like, hey, stupid, you missed my intro. I went up on stage and no one played the piano. And he came running up like, Dice, I'm so sorry. Oh, God. And he goes, Dante, where's Dice? I'm like, right here, stupid.
Dude, I mean, when a comedian does something on stage like magic or brings a prop or even a guitar, other comics will definitely give them shit. If not in their face, behind their back, right? That is considered lowbrow, not cool. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't amazing comics that can do that. And many have become millionaires, right? Jeff Dunham and Carrot Top and all those guys, right? But the impersonation, right, where it's just you on stage, it's just you and the microphone and what you can do with your voice, dude, if you don't nail it, A+, you are going to be destroyed by your fellow comics. If not in front of your face, behind your back, just ruthless, right? Dante is one of those guys who doesn't just kind of make it sound like that person. Somehow he's actually squeezing his larynx in the back of his, I don't know what the biology of it is, but dude, it is absolutely. Dante, when you're perfecting an impression, I mean, are you just like your worst enemy in terms of saying it's not ready yet? I'm not going to do it yet. I'm not ready yet.
Yes. You know how I learned to do impressions? At Patrick Henry High School, they were doing a play called Play It Again, Sam. And the guy knew I was a comedian, the teacher. And he goes, do you do impressions? And I said, yes, I think I did a couple of my friends or a couple cartoon characters. But he goes, all right, I need you to do Humphrey Bogart. I didn't know what he sounded like. So I went home. And what I did was I recorded a piece of Casablanca, one line. And I listened to it 1,000 times until I sounded like it. So I remember it very clearly what the line was, too, because I heard it so many times. He goes, Humphrey Bogart goes, my interest in whether Victor Laszlo stays or goes is purely a sporty one, I assure you. Right? So my interest in whether Victor Laszlo stays or goes is purely a sporty one, I assure you. So then I tried to do it. I was like, my interest in whether Victor Laszlo, oh, shit. So I listened to it again. My interest in whether Victor Laszlo stays or goes is purely a sporty one, I assure you. I do it over and over. And then finally, one time, it's like they sounded identical. I went, I did it. Now I have to figure out the face. For De Niro, you scrunch up and you make your face look, like his. Or, with Jack Nicholson, it's always about eyebrows and how you smile. Something like that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I like to do the whole body. I learned it from watching Jim Carrey before he was famous. He used to be on some show that Jim Brogan hosted on Showtime. And I remember watching him on there doing Henry Fonda from On Golden Pond, and he was doing E.T. and all these other things. And I was like, man, everything he does is all about the face so that's who I became. I just mimicked that guy.
Yeah. So we're about to switch formats pretty soon here in the next couple episodes from just audio to video. When that happens, Dante, we're gonna have to drag you back on the show. So we
Why did you tell me to wear sequins if you weren't filming?
that was Chris.
Just a personal preference, basically. You know.
Do you tell everyone to wear sequins, or was it just me?
No, I don't. I don't. So that's why you should feel special.
Oh, yes, you do. He says it every time. Dude, look, I got to back up for one quick second because Humphrey Bogart, I would say, is one of those impersonations that probably back in the day, when you had Lenny Bruce and guys back in the day, you know, the 60s, right, or whatever, probably people were cranking out Humphrey Bogart impersonations back then, right? Because
Of course.
yeah. And you hear people do them all the time. I'm not just saying this. I closed my eyes as you were doing it. I don't really think that if Humphrey Bogart was alive today, that it would sound that different. That was fucking dead on for Humphrey Bogart. And
Oh, thanks. That's
yeah,
really nice.
no, for sure, man. I mean,
I used to be so good at doing my brother, who doesn't even sound like me at all, that my mom would have half-hour conversations with me until I just broke at some point. My brother sounded like this. Hey, man. Oh, hey, Mom. What are you doing? No shit? Yeah, I was fishing today. Yeah, like that. And my mom would go on and on. I could fool my sisters. And then finally I'd be like, it's me. It's me. This is not Rick.
you could, that actually sounds like a animated character. I don't know if you've considered that.
No
but
way, man. Shit.
your brother could be an animated character.
He did. He sounded like an anim. It was weird how we came out of the same house because he sounded like he was like from the South or something. And we grew up in California.
I was gonna say, it was like, hey, Vern.
Obviously, you bumped into a number of celebrities. The Sam Kinison one is awesome. Any other stories from your time at comedy clubs where shit went sideways, something completely unexpected happened? It's almost every night. It's probably too hard to remember them all. Yeah.
Okay, here's a couple I'll give you real quick. Both of these you can search on the internet. That's why I'm going to give them to you. One night, my wife and I were performing in South Texas somewhere, and I was on stage. I forget what it is, but somehow search Dante comedian falls off stage. Anyway, I was telling a joke, and mid-joke, I was on this very high stage. We're not talking a little stage. I'm talking like it's at least 6 feet off the ground. And I stepped forward, and there is no step. And when I fell face forward. I did stop myself with my hands, but the microphone was in my hand. So it sounds like I break my face open when I hit. And all you hear when you watch this video, it's the funniest part to me is the minute I hit the ground, you hear Rebecca scream from the back. I really did mess up my knee. That's what took the brunt of it. But it's funny to watch. That's the only reason I'm telling you. But there's one that this really happened. I was very popular on BET, and I was doing a show in about 1995 at a college in Champlain, Illinois. Is that a place?
It
Champlain?
is, yeah.
Anyway, I was doing the college there, and right before they brought me up on stage, a fight broke out. And instead of stopping the fight, the DJ started playing music to keep the fight going. He's like, hit that bitch, hit that bitch. And then all of a sudden, the DJ, the host of the show, he comes out, he's like, hey, you guys, stop fighting. Okay, I'm going to bring up Dante. Like, that's what I'm walking out to, right? So I'm trying to be funny. Barely anyone's paying attention. And then some guy threatens that he's going to shoot me, which I don't disbelieve because I've had people like threaten that in the past. And then it turns out they did have a gun on them. Or they'll be like, I'm going to go out to my car. I have a white Mercedes out front and it's in the glove box. And then all of a sudden after the show, the bouncers come up and go, by the way, when you were on stage, the police showed up. They did check his car. He did have a .45 in his glove box, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, you can look up this video. Dante, threatened on stage. Some guy says he's going to shoot me. And the whole time I figure if they're going to shoot me, I might as well make jokes about it. I'm like, hey, can you at least take me over state lines so I'm not killed in your stupid town? Or, just on and on. And finally, I got them laughing to the point where they didn't shoot me, but they were ready to shoot me.
Well, sometimes you're fighting for your life on stage, metaphorically. With Dante, You never know, man. That could be your last performance. I also like the fact that metaphorically, if you sucked on that set, people would say you fell flat on your face. Dante takes it to an entirely new level, literally falls flat on his face. Yeah. It's weird, right? Comedy clubs are one of the last bastions of just anything can happen, and it's still true to this day, right? You can go to a comedy club right now, and the whole cool thing about it is you don't know what's going to happen on stage. You can't control what the person's going to say. It could go any weird direction. And
don't you love that, though?
I love it. That's the greatest part of it, dude. Yeah.
And everyone goes there.
Yeah.
You could be in the smallest town. Like I've had, after the show, Rebecca, we were in, God, where were we? Baton Rouge. She goes, oh, this celebrity was just here. Daryl Hammond watched your show. Or, there's always some celebrity in the show. Prince has come out to see me before. I remember one night after a show, what's his name? Gene Simmons from Kiss handed me $100 bill and goes, good job. Just like, how crazy is that?
Did he do it with his tongue, or did he just use it? He used his hand? No.
I couldn't tell which one it was. Yeah.
Dante, as you look back on those days, and I guess in my particular situation, I'd be referring to the early 90s, but, doing the improv and stuff, and you and I mean, me to a much smaller extent, you're talking A-list people that you hung out with and have performed with. But I remember, in the 90s, the guys that I would middle for or open for, you're just hanging out with them, and it's like Patton Oswalt and David Spade and Norm Macdonald, and again, Sam Kinison, and my favorite of all time.
Sounds like you were with A-listers also, my friend.
Well, at the time, these are dudes that are definitely funny. Don't get me wrong. They're funny guys. But you know what it really is, besides talent and just total guts, I guess? It's persistence. It's just, you just do it and do it and do it and do it, and you don't give up on it. And that's when you start to go, holy shit, is that Zach Galifianakis in a major motion picture? I remember that dude, blah, blah, blah. Patton Oswalt, what the fuck? Patton Oswalt, my brain just kept exploding in the, early 2000s and mid 2000s where you're like, what?
I know. I always feel like that. People go, do you know any celebrities? I'm like, almost every celebrity, I know them because we all started together.
Right.
I remember when I was a doorman at the Comedy Store, it was like me, Joe Rogan, Carlos Mencia, I could name 10 other people that are all famous,
Sure.
It's just sort of how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a crazy business we're in. I remember Lamont Ferguson, who's a comic from San Diego. He said to me one day, if you're ever in LA and you see a comic named Jerry Seinfeld, go say hi to him. I worked with him on a cruise ship and he was very funny and I just want to make sure to say hi. So I move up to LA. I see this guy's name, Jerry Seinfeld, on the list. And I think, oh, I better go say, whatever he told me to say. I don't know him from Adam. He's not famous at the time. And if he is, I don't know it. And I asked someone at the Improv, is Jerry Seinfeld here? And he points out this guy sitting in the audience. I walk up to Jerry and go, excuse me. Hey, I'm a comic. My friend Lamont. And he cuts me off. He literally just turns to me and goes, F off. I'm trying to watch the show. This was before he was famous. And I was like, never mind. I didn't even know how to react. Like I wanted to punch him. I just kind of backed off and I was like, okay, that's that guy. I guess that's the story I get to tell Lamont.
Look, I mean, the early 90s or mid 90s, it was still perfectly okay to punch someone in the face and you probably wouldn't face any sort of jail time. It was just sort of the honor system.
As a matter of fact, Mitzi would give you a main room spot if you were in trouble.
That's right. Right on. Exactly. Oh my God, dude. The number of almost fistfights that would break out on a regular basis. And I was at the Tame Comedy Store, the one in La Jolla that's supposed to be, the mellow one. And oh my God, yeah, for sure. Guns and fistfights and threats and just crazy people. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I mean, I was doing stand-up, in LA when the Rodney King stuff was happening. Like it was a different time. It was not just hip hop, but it was like gangster rap was big. And when I was getting popular on BET, I was doing all black shows in LA, and every night at the show, it was like Shaquille O'Neal was there, and Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre, and every gang member in town was there. And, I remember hanging out with Tupac one night, and he was sitting next to Tretch from Naughty by Nature, who did that. You down with OPP?
Yeah, you know me.
And someone pulled a gun on those guys. And next thing you know, everyone's running out of the Comedy Store. And like, it was insane. What an insane time. My poor parents must have just thought, what has this poor kid done to himself?
Now, Dante, I remember, when I was, doing my best to get good spots at the Comedy Store in La Jolla, and you and a buddy of yours, and I think his name was Anthony, or is Anthony. Am I?
Anthony Ramos.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. Absolutely. Anthony Ramos. Yeah. Yeah. Really funny guy. But you guys were both on BET shows and regulars. And again, I thought that was such an interesting transition, right? You guys, just kind of found your way during, BET, right? At that time, they were really peaking. They were at the height of their, maybe not the height of their popularity, but
they were.
How did that transition even happen? Like, what was it that got you to even audition, or how did that even happen?
It was Faison, honestly. Faison said to me, Dante, you can't just do La Jolla. You're going to, he goes, right by our house, because he lived near me by Patrick Henry. He said there's a place that does comedy called Smokey Gaines Nightclub off Mission Gorge Road. And Smokey, I guess, was an ex-Charger or something like that.
No, he was the coach of the San Diego State Aztecs basketball team.
He was?
Whose son actually went to Patrick Henry as well. A year behind us.
Chris is a living Wikipedia, just so you know, in case you haven't noticed.
I love this, by the way. I love Chris. It should be your show. I don't even like Jeff on this show.
I agree.
So Smokey's is where I started playing for black crowds, and I was terrible the first time. So I did terrible, and Faison said, you were terrible. Start watching these shows every week, and then go up in a month. See if you get it by then. And I did, and I did well. And then when I moved to LA, like I said, it was such a hip hop time that when I started a room at the Comedy Store Belly Room, everyone who showed up, including the comedians, were all black. And so BET came out and saw me, and that's when they put me on the show. And that show really did start the careers of so many people. D.L. Hughley was the host. I remember meeting Cedric the Entertainer, and it was his first night ever. And he's like, Dante, I'm a huge fan. Help me, tell me, some advice. We're on the same show. I don't want to screw this up. Monique was on there. Some more. God, I can't even think of how many people that you would know. Cat Williams. Everybody that's black started on that show, except Chris Rock and Chappelle.
Cat Williams, to this day, just giving him a shout out, not that he needs one. If you could just design my exact humor, like the thing that I laugh at, his entire persona, the way he approaches every joke, his nonchalant, everything, his inflections.
I could watch him all day. I'm with you, Jeff.
I love him so much. He's awesome.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I love him, Chris Rock, Chappelle.
Oh my God, the best.
Yeah, I did have a sitcom. You were just mentioning this. It was on BET. It was called Nothing But a Woman. They changed the title to it later, I think, to the Blackberry Inn, but it was called Nothing But a Woman. And Richard Pryor did his last TV appearance on that show. And the sad part is his MS got so bad. So Paul Mooney, who was his best friend, was a writer on my show. He was the head writer. He and I figured out, let's get Richard on the show. So we get him on the show, and he had this guy that would push him in a wheelchair named David. And the day Pryor showed up, David says, you guys, he can't talk anymore. I'm sorry. So what we figured out, what we would do is we would pretend Richard was whispering into David's ear. And then David would go, oh, what's that, Richard? And then David would say all of Richard's lines. Mr. Pryor says he wants blah, 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 so that's what we ended up doing.
So Dante, I'm really curious your thoughts on, we talked a little bit about what it was like, back in the day, whatever, very Gen X-y, right? Every man for himself, all kinds of weird shit happening.
Right. I mean, when Chris was telling his story, I forgot to say this. When you told your story about that kid drowning in a pool, I said recently to my sister, I was like, man, my kid has no friends that have died. I said, when we were growing up, we all knew someone whose like sister drowned in a pool, or the kid died, or they were in a drunk driving crash. Every kid knew a kid that died. My daughter knows no one that's died.
I'd call that progress.
Would you not also agree that anytime you were in grade school or middle school or junior high, we called it right back in the day, or high school, was there not at least 8 or 9 students that were in some form of recovery from some sort of an accident? Crutches, casts, neck braces. We've already talked about this, but it's like, you just don't see them anywhere ever. It's like, what happened to the injuries? Where are they?
Right. Everyone was wearing a cast back then. And back when we were growing up, there were movies like, if you're a 15-year-old virgin, you're a loser. All these things were about kids having sex, and the Blue Lagoon had nudity of children. And
Or as we've kind of touched on, there was, at least for us, let's just say, I was going to say, horny young teenagers, there was a ton of them, whether it was, right? And Jeff, we may have talked about these movies like My Tutor and Private Lessons or Class, where it was all about the young, like 15, 16-year-old kid and the teacher, tutor, divorced mom. And that was the crux. And that was and these were comedies.
Blame It on Rio has Michael Caine wanting to have sex with a young girl.
His best friend's daughter. Right. And then his daughter was like Demi Moore or something like that, or something. Right.
Demi Moore, right.
Chris, I know we talked about this too, but I mean, one of my favorite movies back then, because I'm such an Anthony Michael Hall fan, especially as a kid, Weird Science, where Kelly LeBrock is like, making out with the character anyway, a 15-year-old. And hey,
2 15-year-olds in a shower.
Do you want to take a shower with me? Yeah. I mean, you're just like, I'm sorry, what now?
And they built her to have sex with them.
Yeah, thank you. I did forget about that part. That's right.
No, you did.
Yeah. No, I did. I literally did, because you get so caught up in the premise, you're not thinking how bizarre it is. You're thinking, oh man, that would be so cool, right? That's all you're thinking. You don't care about that shit.
Or like in 16 Candles, when Anthony Michael Hall holds up the underwear that all the boys are looking at. Like he just, had sex with Molly Ringwald or whatever it is.
And Molly Ringwald goes, okay, you can have them. They like cut some sort of a deal where it's like, yeah, go ahead, take my underwear, show it to your friends. I don't care.
By the way, speaking of the 70s, I watch every night. My wife says it's my trauma response to the election. I watch The Love Boat, 2 or 3 episodes every single night, every night.
Because you get a smorgasbord of celebrities on that show, every show, right?
But it is the most, I cannot believe how misogynistic this show is, how out of touch it is. And I'm not talking about woke. I'm talking about, it's just, you kiss someone on that show, and by the end of the episode, they're getting married. Like, it's insane. It's insane. Like, every woman goes on there to get married within 2 days.
Or Doc is essentially, the biggest horn dog. So it's just like preying on these passengers, right? And the thing that I think probably the most different now for Love Boat that wasn't misogynistic, but it was slightly kind of racist. I'm just going to put it this way: when you would do the opening, right, and you would see who the guest stars were, whether it was Suzanne Plachette or Bert Convy, whoever was popping up in the little porthole, right?
Wow, you outdid yourself.
Okay, right, and you know what I'm talking about. But the thing is like, if it happened to be like Diane Carroll, Isaac, all right, Isaac's getting some this episode.
Isaac got family on board, or he's falling in love.
Without question. It was like they never, ever could hook up Isaac with, Sandy Duncan.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that every time. The minute they show black people, I'm like, well, we're going to see Isaac a lot in this episode. He's either going to be friends with the black people, or he's going to be dating one of them. There was an actress named Sheila Fraser who popped up a couple nights ago. And the minute she came on, I knew she was going to be Isaac's love interest. But I turned to my wife and I went, oh my God, that lady Sheila Fraser, she starred in a bunch of stuff in the 70s and 80s. She was the producer of my sitcom.
Wow. That's so crazy how the world just goes in circles. Dante, dude, I knew this was going to be a really fun episode, man. Thank you. This is really, really cool.
Great podcast, you guys. You guys were really good. I'm glad I did this. Thanks for having me on, alumnus.
Well, I don't even know where to start. Is it Sam Kinison or pulling babies to safety? Is it getting told off by Jerry Seinfeld or knife fights in the bathroom? Is it giving a couple of minutes of your time to Eric Bishop, a.k.a. Jamie Foxx? Those are some crazy polls. Richard Pryor. My God, Richard Pryor. Again, crazy polls. I don't know how to top that. Dante, great having you. Love to have you again. And nothing else to say except, Jeff, until next time.
Till next time, Chris.
Wandermere.